One reason I thought this would be a great little video is because both of us are pretty new law professors.
Welcome to the Legal Writing Institute on YouTube and our series, Professor to Professor, where legal writing professors introduce themselves to the LWI community and chat about the legal writing field. In this episode, Anna Morkos and John Bremen chat about their first year as legal writing professors at Loyola Marymount College of Law in Los Angeles. Welcome, Anna and John.
Hi there, folks. I am John Bremen from Loyola Law School, Los Angeles, and I'm here with my colleague, Anna Morkos.
Everyone.
Thanks for joining, Anna. This is awesome. So glad to be talking to you today. But one reason I thought this would be a great little video is because both of us are pretty new law professors. This is my first year, ending my first year as a visiting professor, a clinical professor at Loyola, teaching legal research and writing. And Anna, what about you?
Same. So I had the good fortune of starting at the same time as John and just finished my first year teaching LRW at Loyola. And I'm excited to be here and excited to chat with John a little bit.
Yeah, same. And some really good news is that both Anna and I are going to be continuing at Loyola longer term. So I'm thrilled about that. I love my job.
Congratulations.
Yeah, same to you, Anna.
Thank you.
Um, so Anna, tell me a little bit about your background in law and kind of how did you get into teaching?
Yeah, so I've been interested in teaching for a long time. Before going to law school, I actually taught in Columbia. I taught English in a university there and loved it. Ultimately, decided to go to law school, like the intellectual challenge, wanted to, open the doors to a legal practice. And so I went to University of Oregon Law School and practiced civil litigation for a couple years and then went in-house at a cosmetics company in Westlake Village. And I was corporate counsel and the director of legal there and really enjoyed my time, but always wanted to get back to teaching. And so after practicing for 10 years, figured it was about time to make that change. And I met the team at Loyola and just had a great fit there and was really excited to join the teaching faculty at Loyola. So that's how I got into it. What about you?
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. Yeah. Well, my career's been I've taken a pretty circuitous path to this position. I started as a musician. I was a jazz guitarist for many years, and decided early on that I wanted to be a music professor. And so after graduate studies and so forth, I landed a really great teaching position at Los Angeles Southwest College in South LA, where I taught music, and I was the chair of humanities and arts and humanities for about a dozen years. But while I was there, I got really interested in kind of social justice issues and trying to figure out, why the community I was working in was, poor and marginalized, to be frank. And I, wanted to help the community. And so I thought law school would be a good introduction, a good way to kind of get into that community. And so I'm a Loyola alum. I went to the night program while I was teaching. And then when I graduated, I did a couple of, I worked a year doing criminal appeals for representing indigent defendants, and spent a couple years clerking in state courts. And then the position I had last was at Public Law Center doing impact litigation in all kinds of different areas, consumer, immigration, housing, a lot of housing. In my mind, kind of like you, Anna, I think I had the teaching bug and wanted to get back into teaching. And so when this job came open, I was really thrilled to apply. And I really do love the gig. It's the best.
Awesome. What do you love best about teaching? What are some things that really light you up about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think at bottom there's like something about when um, when you're helping a student wants to learn something and they're having trouble, and you sort of help them um, get out of this sort of fog. And when that finally happens and the light bulb goes off, that's just like a magical moment. And so I think I kind of live for those moments. That's what's so great about it. Um, I think there are more practical things that are great about the job too. There's a lot of flexibility in the schedule. The colleagues are amazing. There's a lot of smart people doing really interesting things at Loyola. And so it's just great to kind of be around that energy all the time. So what's next? So the semester's kind of wrapping up here. Are you starting to make plans for summer? Are you working on things? Are you thinking about next year?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm really excited. I'm working on developing a contract drafting class. And so that's my next project. That's what I'm working on right now. We don't have one at Loyola at the moment. We have kind of adjacent classes, but not strictly contract drafting. And so it's great. It gives me a chance to bring my in-house background to the classroom. And so I'm reading a lot of different books, picking out my textbook, thinking about the different activities that I want to do. I really like having, a very hands-on class, getting my students some real-world experience to the extent possible. And so that's kind of my main project right now. What about you? What are you working on? Or what are you going to be working on?
Yeah, yeah, no, thanks for asking. Yeah, I mean, that contract drafting class sounds awesome. I mean, before I talk about my stuff, I do want to know more about it. How are you going to structure that class, or have you gotten that far yet? I mean, I'm thinking of to myself, I'd like to take a contract drafting class. What is it all about?
Yeah, well, I'm still kind of working on the high level ideas. But the essence of it is I want to give students the experience of walking into like an in-house job, where your boss, says, "Hey, we've got this contract in. I need you to review it, point out some risk points, maybe write an email to the business partners, saying what are some risks here, what are some opportunities, what questions do you have for them?" So learning how to redline a contract is going to be very important. Another thing is drafting the contract yourself. Say a client comes to you with some business points and say, "Hey, we've worked out this business deal. Now we need to memorialize it with a contract. How do we do that?" And so taking a terms sheet or terms agreement and turning that into a formal contract will also be a big part of it. And so we've woven into all of that will be, how to write red lines on a contract, how to draft provisions of a contract clearly and unambiguously, how to put together a whole document. So a lot of, drawing on the things that students learn in LRW, and then bridging that into the contract world.
Yeah, I mean that's such an important class, it's such an important skill too that like every attorney needs. I mean, it's like when I was in law school, I thought I'm never gonna draft a contract. I don't need this. But then in practice, it's like, well, even just like a settlement agreement, like that's a contract. It had, and I realized when I was drafting settlement agreements that I really wish I had taken the kind of class you're offering. I mean, that sounds great.
Yeah,
Um,
settlement agreements will be part of it. I think that that's kind of a forgotten piece of it that is so important. And litigators, take all these great classes focused on litigation and never realize that so many cases settle and that these contracts are very important and can be pretty difficult, frankly. And so trying to at least, put together some materials so that students are prepared for those.
yeah, no, that's sweet. Yeah, I mean, so I think, next year I'm not teaching anything new. I don't think I may, I've offered to teach sort of whatever is needed. I think that will mostly be legal research and writing. But I am working on a couple projects like you, Anna. I'm speaking at the Global Legal Skills Conference in the Czech Republic in late May. Um, and that's on I don't know if you've ever, this is kind of a maybe an arcane topic, but in Syria there's a lot happening right now. But over the last 10, 12 years, there's a pretty interesting development in northern Syria. It's a revolution that was sort of started by the Kurds, but is now very inclusive, called Rojava. Um, And so it's a sort of a radical democratic society in northern Syria. And so I'm really interested in their sort of legal system and legal practices. Some of it's quite like what we know in the Western world, but some of it is quite different, especially in terms of sort of dispute resolution. Not everything goes to a court. There's a lot of different mechanisms for resolving disputes. And I'm kind of interested in how that works and what the implications are, what we can learn from that in our law school curriculum or more broadly in our society. So I'm working on that. I also have a paper that I'm sort of trying to finish up, looking at housing law, affordable housing law in California, which is quite interesting and kind of a mess, to be honest. Both the law and my article, but I'm hoping that by August that will be all sorted. And then, of course, I'm excited to go to the Allwood Conference in July. Are you going to that, Anna?
TBD, I am going to the conference in Washington, D.C. I'm excited about that. Um, and
When,
so
when is that again?
that's in early June.
Awesome.
Yeah, the new teachers conference. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Sweet. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it sounds like we have busy summers.
Yeah, definitely.
I know
Yeah,
you
you've
have.
got quite a range of projects. That's impressive.
Yeah, you might call it eclectic. Maybe I should figure out what I really want to study, but it all seems interesting to me. Uh,
Fascinating.
so so yeah, lots of projects right now. Um, Now I know. So this summer, I know you have a couple small children. Anna, are you gonna be entertaining them this summer?
Yeah, definitely. So looking forward to a little break from teaching to teach the little ones. But yeah, we've got a couple trips with the family, and then yeah, probably just doing some local activities. Going to the Natural History Museum is always a favorite. Swim lessons, of course, and then just hanging out with family and friends, trying to get together at the park with their friends. So, what about you? Any fun plans for the summer?
The park is huge. The park is
Yeah.
a lifesaver. My kid's is 11, and so yeah, she has a bunch of camps, frankly, this
Mm.
summer. Lots of
Mhm.
interest. She's a drummer, so lots of music camps. And but yeah, we have a couple family trips as well.
Nice.
And uh, yeah, camps and a few trips, and probably some just good old-fashioned hanging out, summer style.
Definitely.
Um, well, now here's another thing that you all might not know about Anna and I, and that is we both have fairly long commutes to Loyola Law School. We both live about an hour away. And so that leaves a lot of time in the car. How do you occupy yourself in the car, Anna?
Great question. There's always, the phone calls to long lost friends and family and whoever needs to be caught up with, and any conference calls I can squeeze in while driving. But I really do enjoy listening to podcasts. So I have a couple favorites on rotation. I like there's the skim is kind of like a summary of news articles, and they've developed into they also do a sports podcast, and it's called the Skim Well Played, and it sums up the sports news of the week, but done in kind of a I don't know, a more informal and more I don't know. They try and make it as interesting as a reality TV show. So that's kind of the vibe on that podcast. That's a fun one. Keeps me up to date so that I can, talk fantasy football with my husband. And then I also do like the Happiness Lab with Lori Santos. And that's like a positive psychology podcast. So that one always puts me in a good mood. And sometimes it gives me a few kind of positive psychology tips that I can actually bring into the classroom when I'm trying to motivate my students to have a growth mindset or to, look on the bright side during law school. So those are my two standbys. What about you?
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, definitely podcasts and recently lots of audiobooks. I've had a commute for so long that I've tried lots of different things. I mean, for a long time it was Spanish language podcasts. I used to lead study abroad trips to Spain, and so I was always, interested in making, keeping my Spanish high level. But recently I've been more into audiobooks. Reading a really great right now, reading a really great book called The Rule of Laws, which is a kind of like a global history of law. And it's fascinating. I just kind of figured, well, if I'm going to, be teaching law, I should probably understand a little bit more about its history and why do we do things the way we do? It's funny. When we were doing oral argument, um, I was teaching students, an introduction with, may it please the court. And of course, somebody asked, why do we say, may it please the court? And that got me thinking that, yeah, I should probably know that. Like, where do we get some of these incantations and some of these rituals? So I've been kind of interested in learning more about that. So
I have
audiobooks.
to get that recommendation from you. I think I would really like that. I like learning the history about things and the why. Why are we doing this? I was actually looking at that in my contract drafting course, looking at like when, that you use two or three words together when just one will suffice and where that comes from. And it actually has very like deep historical roots. And I was like, actually, I think my students might be interested in knowing why. And I think putting the story along with the lesson that you're teaching kind of helps it stick better. So I'll have to get that book suggestion or that audiobook suggestion from you. But
For
I
sure.
think it's nice. I don't know. I like learning about it. Do you think your students are interested in that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's fast. I mean, when you go to law school, if you just remember back to 1L, like it's weird. There's some
Mhm.
weird things. Like this is weird. Why do we do it this way?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some of it's quite foreign. I mean, not, the kind of some of the rituals and like some of the language, like you've mentioned. So yeah, I think learning the why is really helpful. Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah. Anything else? What else have you brought into your classroom this past year or in the past that's kind of been engaging or that you've really enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, this year I tried to keep, like you, I've tried to keep my class sort of active. And it's always a balance of like how do we do things in class and have the students get reps, but at the same time make sure that they have an understanding of like the background and the, things that you would typically lecture on. And so that's been a challenge. I did try this thing, and I told you, I think earlier this year, I noticed it in one of the graded assignments that students were having trouble sort of marshaling the facts. This fact is important for such and such factor or element or whatever. And so I started thinking about it in terms of buckets, and so I just bought a bunch of little buckets. It, felt a little bit like a preschool class, but the students actually quite liked it. And it reminded me of like, years ago when I was at Southwest College, there was a philosophy professor who was part-time. And so during the day, he taught at an elementary school. And at night, he's a brilliant professor. At night, he taught, some of the basic philosophy classes. And one day I saw him in the hall and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he said, "Oh, today's a great day. This morning I was teaching students Plato, and now I'm about to teach them Plato."
Ah.
So it got me thinking, like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a little bit what I feel like right now with these buckets. But no, so I tried to incorporate some little things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they're epic failures. Um, how about you? Did you find anything particularly fun or useful this year?
No, I experimented with a few things and tried to get some ideas from colleagues. One thing that I really enjoyed doing was at the beginning of the second semester teaching persuasive writing, kind of taking it a little bit more high level and talking about what is persuasion and like the nature of persuasion. And so talking about the ethos, pathos, and logos, like what those are, and then using video clips of like pop culture movies to show these different methods of persuasion through video clips. And I think that the students really liked it, and I found it really helpful, and it stuck with them because throughout the semester, then they would incorporate that vocabulary into what they were doing and try to understand like what is the purpose of this sentence? Am I employing ethos, pathos, or logos in this sentence, in this paragraph? Like, what persuasive technique am I using, and why? And should I be using a different one, or how am I doing that? And then it also led to a discussion on professionalism, and I think it helped the students understand like why citations matter, why formatting matters, why it matters to show up in nice clothes to oral argument, because that's your credibility, and all these things matter. And so trying to help them understand that we're not just doing this for the sake of doing it. I'm not just taking off, points for punctuation and typos because that there's a reason that that's important. And so I don't know, I enjoyed teaching the lesson that way, and I think my students did too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to maybe get some of those sources from you later.
yeah, we can definitely share notes.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, so speaking of things that you did this past year, do you have any ideas for next year? Anything that you're interested in, doing or expanding upon?
yeah, you know, um, I can see already that this is going to be t teaching LRW is going to be a process of just continually refining. Um, I mean, this year gave me a good place to start, and so there are some things that worked, but certainly I do want to find a way for students to get more reps in class. And so, I went to an LWI seminar recently where somebody was talking about sort of a flipped classroom model, where class really was sort of just doing activities, or at least mostly, and then a lot of the kind of background content was online. And so I'm going to look into some doing some of that, at least working some of that into the class a little more, just to give my students more practice. Um,
Mm,
practice using formulas for case illustrations, practice stating rules, or practicing citations. Um, I think, or even just practicing like, different kind of, writing mechanics exercises, whatever it is. So I think that's what I'm looking to do next semester. What about you?
yeah, I mean, that sounds great. I'd love to hear your ideas on that. I was thinking about trying to bring more writing style and, mechanics of writing into the classroom. And I did do some, writing warm-ups at the beginning of class and talked about certain things. And it's difficult because there's so much to teach, and it's what to pick and what to choose. And so I'm going to have to think about that. And I think grading the trial briefs is actually helpful, and I'll look back on the places where it really matters, in your writing style, in your grammar, and try and get some of those like big impact lessons and bring those into the classroom. And I think I have a better sense now of where 1Ls are as a whole. And now that's difficult, obviously, because people are at very different levels in their writing style and writing ability. But, I'm toying around with some ideas of how to do, maybe more small group lessons focused on what people need individually, or perhaps just provide, resources and opportunity for review, so that I am reviewing writing for writing style specifically. So I have a lot of ideas, but I'm looking forward to going to the conferences over the summer, and talking to other colleagues and seeing, kind of what ideas I can get to bolster that.
Yeah, I mean, the
Yeah,
writing conferences are so great for that, right?
mm,
I mean, really
definitely.
a lot of inspiration. It's funny because I always want to come back and employ all these things, but
Mm,
especially after this year, I've realized I need to kind of pare things down a little bit and really focus on some basic things. I feel like the
mm,
students that are doing the best really have a grip on like just the basic things,
yeah,
being able to, use IRAC or various formulas that we're
mhm,
talking about in class, different kind of, are we doing analogical analysis? Well, okay, here's some formulas we can use.
mhm,
And students that really stick to that and are really good at, have gotten good at some of these formulas, they've done really well on their final product. And so I want to make sure that I'm like, if nothing else, I'm really stressing like some of these basic things. Um, so I think that's what I'm looking for.
Keeping it simple is important. And I know that in the legal writing community, there's a lot of talk about, just keeping it simple, paring it down. There's so much temptation to stuff so much into class, and really trying to pick and choose. But I think grading actually does help with that, because now that I'm, looking at my rubric and looking, okay, what's really important, what's not, what can I let slide? Okay, these really important things, that's what I'm going to take and make sure that that's at the forefront of my classes
Yeah, for
for
sure.
next year.
Like, our class is only what, 4 units, I think,
Mhm.
a year. And, as much as you want to pack in, there's only so much time. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think we all want, students just walking out, being able to, if nothing else, like, write a brief well, just give.
Yeah, I like them to be able to like walk out and read critically too, because I can only teach so much. But if they're, for every opinion that they're reading, if they at least like keep in the back of their mind, okay, what did this author do well? What did they not do well? Like, what is the organization here? What kind of reasoning are they using here? Then my hope, at least, is that then their writing will develop as they read more critically. So that's my hope. And I talked about that last year, but I think I'll hopefully maybe even make that more explicit, and maybe, assign an exercise along those lines to help them be able to identify that. Because I think, at every level of life, reading is the foundation of being a good writer, whether you're creative or whether you're, in elementary school or whether you're, in legal writing. So that's something that I try to focus on too.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's, I think, that's really apparent when, the students come in the first week and it takes them, 4 hours to read an opinion. And then, at least maybe that was just my experience as a 1L. But by the end of the year, it's pretty easy within 5 or 10 minutes to get all the things that are necessary out of that opinion. And I think you're right. That comes from kind of critical reading and really understanding how opinions are put together. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't miss those days when it took me 4 hours to read a case. So
Okay. It wasn't
happy to
just
be
me.
past that. What's that?
It wasn't just me.
No, no, it was all of us. One whole year was a tough time. Yeah.
All right. Well, Anna, it's been so great talking to you. It's kind of out of time here. But thanks again. And I look forward to seeing you on campus.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been great chatting with you as always, and best of luck wrapping up the end of the semester and rolling into summer. So, all
Thanks.
right, thanks. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Our LWI colleagues want to know you better. Scan the QR code, complete the form, and the PR, website, social media, and LWIC committee will be in touch. Then, grab a pal and record your professor-to-professor chat. Share a link to the video, and we'll do the rest. Thanks again, Anna and John, and thanks everyone for watching LWI's Professor to Professor.